Now, while the coronavirus cases in the U.S. are setting new records every day and governments debate new restrictions, other countries are starting to open up. About 6 international students are set to enter Australia today, the first time since March. The students are from China, Hong Kong, Vietnam, Japan, and Indonesia. They tested negative for the virus before flying to the northern city of Darwin. And after arrival, they'll be quarantining for 14 days. Analysts estimate Australian universities could lose up to $19 billion in student revenue if borders remained closed until 2021. And the opening of borders to international students comes at a time where tensions between Australia and China are growing. Today, a Chinese foreign ministry official tweeted a faked photo of an Australian soldier holding a knife to an Afghan child. Australian Prime Minister Scott Morrison called for an apology over the tweet. And many are curious about what the future holds for the two, specifically with the Biden administration making an emphasis on allies. And we're joined today by Bloomberg's Ed Johnson, a managing editor for Australia and New Zealand, who's been covering these relations in depth. Ed, thanks for joining us. And I'll just start right off with this tweet. It inflamed an already tense situation. Why did this set things off so badly between the two countries?
Yes, good morning from Sydney. Well, this comes against a backdrop of steady deteriorating ties between the two countries, with China complaining that Australia has interfered in its internal affairs, from Hong Kong to Taiwan to the treatment of minority Muslim Uyghurs. This tweet could be viewed as Beijing goading Australia, effectively saying, you meddle in our sovereign interests, we'll start doing the same to you. But what's angered Morrison is that this image that was tweeted is clearly doctored, and it's likely designed to provoke a reaction at a time when Australia is wrestling with its own investigation into alleged war crimes committed by its special forces soldiers in Afghanistan. He's called the image repugnant. He's demanded an apology, but still he wants to use this low point in ties as a circuit breaker and an opportunity to reset this vitally important relationship.
And we know it's vitally important because of trade. China accounts for about a third of Australia's total trade. That's 3 times more than the number 2 country. And we know today that China recently imposed a 212% anti-dumping tax on Australian wine. Now, how costly is this for Australia, and at what point does it become unsustainable?
Well, for the individual companies involved, it's very costly. Treasury Wine, for instance, Australia's largest listed wine producer, the maker of Penfolds Grange, they've been hit with a tariff of about 169%, and their share price has fallen 18% in the past couple of days. And they're really having to look forward to a future now of finding new customers in the US and Europe. Most of the commodities hit so far have been lesser order agricultural commodities like barley, sugar, timber, cotton. And Citi's baseline scenario is a 10% drop in total exports to China over the next 12 months. That'd shave about 0.3% off GDP, so not terrible. Of course, it becomes a very different story if China starts targeting our massive iron ore exports. But that's seen as unlikely because China needs our high-quality iron ore for its steel, which, of course, is the backbone of its own economic expansion.
You know what? There hadn't been a lot of talk about what China might need from Australia in this situation. Thanks for explaining that. Now, this China-Australia spat, it's hardened attitudes toward China within Australia to the point where even business groups have stopped pushing for warmer ties. Now, what are the 2 most visible implications of this spat when you're looking at how the economy is functioning?
Well, I think two very stark and physical reminders of this spat. Firstly, it has impacted coal. That is a significant export for us. There are about 50 cargo ships now carrying some $500 million worth of Australian coal stranded off a Chinese port. That growing queue, very physical reminder of this trade spat. The other issue you touched on quite nicely in the introduction there. what happens when Australia fully reopens its international borders, maybe mid to late next year when a vaccine's available. China has urged its citizens to reconsider vacationing in Australia or studying at Australian universities. And they're vital to both our tourism industry and our higher education sector. So it'll be very, very interesting to see how that plays out in coming months.
Well, I do want to know another thing. Morrison has sought to portray Australia as stuck in the middle of the U.S. and China spat. Singapore's Prime Minister has said the same thing. Could a Biden administration possibly change this viewpoint, and how?
Well, certainly Australia has long sought to thread that needle between close ties with its biggest trading partner, China, and close ties with its most important security alliance, which is the US. And it says it shouldn't have to take sides, but that dynamic could well shift under a Biden presidency. Biden has vowed to rebuild relations that have been damaged under Trump's America First policies. And that multilateral approach could see key groupings such as the Quad, which is the US, Japan, Australia, and India, and the Five Eyes Security Alliance being reinvigorated in an effort to really start trying to contain some of China's expansionism and some of this aggressive wolf warrior diplomacy that we've been seeing.
What do you think, quickly, the next step in trying to repair this relationship might be?
That's the million-dollar question, and one I think that Morrison's own team are working on. He did give a speech last week, which seemed to be an olive branch, reaching out to China, saying that it wasn't favouring Trump, that it wasn't following a path of trying to economically contain China. But clearly that hasn't worked. We've hit a new low point in relations between the two countries. And it's very, very difficult to see now that there's an off-ramp in this ongoing downward spiral in relations between these two key trading partners.
Okay, Bloomberg's Ed Johnson, thanks for joining us.
The biggest stories the moment they happen from around the globe. Subscribe to Bloomberg Quicktake now for insight in an instant.